So let's see if I can do a quick little mod video on this Boss Course CE2 pedal. I'm not even sure how I acquired this, but I find a lot of pedals that are busted and I throw them in a pile and eventually get to restoring them. I see these tossed aside quite a bit because people don't realize the old Japanese ones need a 12 volt power supply instead of a 9 volt that's standard today. This can easily be fixed with a simple jumper wire, which I've already done to this one, and I'll show you exactly how I did that. I really want to use this for an upcoming tour. I do have other Course pedals that I could implement, but I think this is kind of cool just because it's old and beat up. It sounds really good. The only complaint I have is that the effect is a little too drastic for what I'm going for. I would like to have it a little more subtle. I just want a little bit of a texture to add to some lead guitar work, but I don't really want it to sound like a Course per se. I think it should be easy enough to add a mix control to this pedal. So let's open it up and find out if we can actually do that. Go ahead and take this completely apart. The schematic for the Boss CE2B, which is the base version of this, actually has a mix knob on it. So we can just kind of copy that. They actually show a 250K C taper pot. I don't have a C taper, which is an inverse audio. I just have a linear one. Since the taper of the pot's going to be different, it may, not react the same way that a stock CE2B would. So in order to remove everything 100%, I'm going to go ahead and unsolder these wires here. Alright, so let's see if we can clean up all this muck. Alright, a little bit of soapy water. That's about as clean as we're going to get it. So let's see where we need to actually put this thing in the signal chain. It's a 47K resistor that's got to come out, and it's right beside R20, which is a 1M resistor, which is right by Q9, which should be in the center of this board right here. So we're going to take out this component right here. We know it's the 47K because it's got the yellow band. Yellow starts with 4, purple 7, orange is your multiplier, so it's 47K. Right beside this 1M. Since we've got this thing open, the caps look good and they're probably fine. Let's see if we have what we need to do a recap. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 electrolytics on here. Alright, well, surprisingly enough, I do have all of the right capacitors to do a recap on this, except for the one I just dropped. So I mentioned earlier about the power supply modification. It's really quite simple. On the Boss CE2 specifically, it is just pins 3 and 4. You just put a little jumper wire there. There's a lot of tutorials that say you got to pull components out, which would be this diode and then the resistor directly underneath of it, but there's no real need to pull them out. You just put a wire. You could put it on this side, but I put it on this side because it's easier to get to. I didn't have to flip the board. And if anybody else ever opens up the pedal, they can clearly see that that's been done. So that's all you need to do to get this to take a standard 9 volt adapter. So 2 of these need to be shorted together. So we don't even really need a jumper wire since it's PC pins. We can just carefully squeeze these 2. Use this 22 gauge Teflon coated wire because it's really small and it'll do really well in here. Okay, so this is fully counterclockwise or fully clockwise, and what I want is, if this is fully clockwise, which means it's all the way up, I want it to be at 47K, which is only has the resistor in the circuit. And as I rotate this down, I am starting to mix in the dry signal. So that is pretty much exactly what I want here. And we just need to insert these right where that resistor went. So it doesn't look too bad in there. Looks like we got plenty of room between all those pots. Well, just barely enough room. And actually using some heat shrink on that resistor on the side actually helped out a lot. It's not touching this other pot, but it is pretty close. I'm going to put a little dab of silicone on it just because it had adhesive from the factory, so not that I think it really needs it, but whatever. Let's see, I want to put some foam in there just to kind of steady everything. Since we've done a recap and messed around with this thing, we want to also do the calibration procedure to this, or the adjustment procedure, whatever you want to call it. I've scoured the internet looking for a way to do this, and everyone's just repeating what the instructions are verbatim. I'm kind of convinced that nobody's doing it. For one, the adjustment procedure instructions say to inject a 3 dBm signal. Well, last time I checked, none of our signal generators say dBm at all for anything, so that in itself is pretty confusing, but you don't really need to know that, and I'll show you why. Let's check it out. It'd be nice if we could just connect to the output, but no. It says that we have to connect to the emitter of Q3. So right behind this capacitor here is a transistor, and I'm connected to 1, 2, 3, pin 3, which is the emitter. I've got my signal generator connected to the input. It doesn't matter if the pedal is on or off for this. It needs to be powered, but the signal is going to run through that component no matter what. This needs to be rotated completely counterclockwise, this completely clockwise. This, our modification here, we're going to rotate it completely clockwise. Completely clockwise means it's stock. So here is our oscilloscope that's hooked up. Now the waveform, you just want to see it equally clipping on both sides when you make this adjustment. Now at the time of me filming this video, I'll be honest, I have no idea what dBm means. And if you do a bunch of Google searches, it'll tell you, oh, decibels per milliwatt. Sure, that's fine. Well, what does that mean? Because my signal generator only works in volts. Right now, I've got almost 4.1 volts being fed into this, which is a lot. The adjustment procedure pretty much just tells you that you need to have symmetrical clipping on both sides. And if you turn the amplitude down, you're not going to get that. So you kind of have to like juice it way up in order to make sure the waveform looks like this. And I can turn this down and kind of show you. So it is even, but when I take my trimmer tool and I start rotating this pot, it only lets one side of the waveform clip. If I rotate it too far in the other direction, the other side of the waveform clips. So right now, there's no clipping and the waveform is even on both sides. But if I turn my amplitude up a little bit, you can see that I do have clipping. And it does appear to be even. So what I can do is, I'm just going to hit it to where it just barely clips. And I'm going to turn this again a little bit more and see what the difference is. See, I can smooth out the top. I can smooth out the bottom, or I can hit it just about in the middle to where it appears that we have symmetrical clipping on both sides. So I would say we have this dialed in. Now it doesn't take much of a turn to make that happen. We can maybe even juice this up a little bit more, and see, it doesn't really change because we're already kind of like, we've already run out of headroom. So I used a 200 hertz signal at about 4.1 volts to get this result. And that's about as fine as I can get it. We can even check our peak to peak here. I mean, yeah, we're pretty much exactly even. We just eyeballed it, but my peak to peak measurements are equal. So I think we can go ahead and take this thing loose and listen to it. So off. So right now I've got the mix knob down a little bit. If I turn it all the way up, counterclockwise. It's almost transparent that way. Not quite. It's got a little bit of an EQ change. So I've set it about maybe 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So all I really want out of this thing is, I just want to put a little stank on that note, you know, just a little bit. I don't want it to sound like completely chorusy, not that Ozzy, Zakk Wylde, No More Tears sound, which is awesome, by the way, but that's not what I'm going for. So I want it to be a little bit more subtle. I don't really want any delay in my solos. I just kind of want it to be really dry, old school, but I just want this chorus to give it just a little bit of flavor, a little bit of stank. There we go. We've added a mix knob to a Core CE2. We've done the ACA to PSA conversion. So now it'll accept normal standard 9-volt power adapters. I gotta admit that I don't know a ton about the history of these old pedals. I do like, you know, the old Japanese stuff. I think they're great. There's probably a modern version of this one where you don't have to drill a hole and modify this one, but like I said, this got dug out of a junk pile, and I figured that I might as well grab it and put it to good use. And if nothing else, at least you can take away how to do the calibration procedure there. I'm going to see what else I can get wired up tonight. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.